I just want to thank, we're almost 2 weeks into the relaunch of Phase 1, and you know, our numbers are still, you know, down or low, and that's good. I know that there is a lag between the relaunch and perhaps the numbers going back up, but so far from what I've seen in the community, everybody is trying their best. I really do. I mean, we all know there's a story of the person, and a couple of people that aren't, but to maintain distance. So I once again want to thank Medicine Hat, the residents of Medicine Hat, from the bottom of my heart, frankly. We've kind of we've been chatting around City Hall that a lot of people may be staying in Medicine Hat this summer, obviously, because they don't have a place to go, or they don't, obviously not traveling as much as in the past. And so we're kind of brainstorming around here some ideas of what the city could do to make staying at home in Medicine Hat this summer more enjoyable. And so what I'm going to ask you in the media, and of course this video is posted on our website and our Facebook, to please maybe make some comments, some positive comments, some constructive comments as to what maybe you would like to see. Obviously, financially, the sky's not the limit, but if there's an idea that you have about perhaps camping in the city or something along that lines, or what you'd like to see, which would, of course, maintain distancing, social distancing, please forward it to us, and the city is looking for some sort of ideas, and we have some of our own that we'll maybe share in a few weeks as well. So I'm asking you that of the residents of Medicine Hat. But other than that, we're going to have Merrick give an update, and of course on the river, as everybody can see, that it's actually coming down. And I'm actually going to say one more thing. Usually there's so much anxiety this time of year about that river, of course, and I'm not feeling it. And so I'm going to give credit to the previous council of 2013 that decided to spend $33 million, frankly, on berms. And imagine if we did have a flood right now during this COVID. I mean, we could see what happened in Fort McMurray. But I'm not sensing that anxiety this year because we are prepared and ready if something should happen. And so I think that is one of the great benefits of this community, is that at least during this pandemic, we're not having that huge anxiety over the river at this time of year. So anyway, Merrick, thanks.
Just as Mayor Clugston said, I also want to thank the community. We've made it through another week. It's another tough week, and still going to continue here. We're not out of the woods of this just yet. I just wanted to use this opportunity to provide two updates throughout my update here. So the first one is going to be around playground structures and skate parks, and the second one is just regarding a regular update regarding our preemptive flood protection measures. So the first one, obviously, playground structures and skate parks, exciting for everybody. We're excited, in fact, to be able to announce the fact that we are opening on May 29th. And so last week I had announced that the province had just released the guidelines for the ability to reopen these types of facilities or outdoor recreational areas. And so we were quick to respond to that and provide an actual date. So we listened to you, and we were able to provide that date for May 29th. So we heard you, and we heard the fact that you want this open. And so as we move through this relaunch, our own relaunch strategy, so not necessarily looking at the Alberta relaunch strategy as in phases, when we open up facilities and structures for that matter, we look at a couple of different factors or numerous different factors. So number one is, how does it actually align with the Alberta relaunch strategy? So that's a component in there. A second one is related to how the community is actually doing and how they're responding. And this comes back down to actually compliance rates when it comes down to enforcement or education. And I want to applaud the community for how well that they're doing with this. And we're going to basically open up those playground structures and skate parks. Now we're going to ask something from you guys, so the members of the public, to be responsible with this process. So given the fact that the playground structures and the skate parks are going to be open, this is going to be kind of a situation where you're going to walk onto the skate park or you're going to walk into the playground and there's not going to be hand sanitizer available. It's a little bit different than if you were to walk into a mall or walk into a restaurant, and there's going to be hand sanitizer right there. So this is on the public and the users of this. This is where that critical, responsible decision making really comes into play. And I rely on the community for this. So you asked us to do this, now I'm asking you to be responsible with this process. So there's a couple of things that I want to bring up specifically as it relates to playground structures and skate parks is, number one, physical distancing. Physical distancing, regardless of the fact that the mass gathering requirements have increased for outdoor activities, physical distancing still remains. So you still have 2 meters of physical distancing. So when you think about this on a playground or on a skate park, if you're not in that same family, by law and by the Chief Medical Officer of Health order, you have to still maintain that 2 meters of physical distancing, regardless of that number of gathering, like that size of the gathering. So this is really where that responsible decision making comes into play with the playground structures and the skate parks. So physical distancing, proper hygiene, the gathering limitations, obviously, and not using any of these facilities, whether it be a playground structure or skate park, if you have any symptoms whatsoever. So you go on the Alberta Health Services website, it'll list specifically what those symptoms are, when you need to stay home. So this is really where we are relying on the community to make those responsible decisions. So the second one that I wanted to talk about is the preemptive flood protection measures. So over the past 48 hours, or about between 48 and 36 hours ago, the river was sitting at about 950 cubic meters per second. So to put things into perspective, during 2013, we were well over 5,000 cubic meters per second. So we were higher than we were in the previous years at this time of year, so 950. So to put things into perspective, we've actually dropped down to roughly about 740, 745 cubic meters per second right now. So what actually occurred, there was a lot of precipitation upstream, filled up a bunch of the reservoirs, released some of the reservoirs, came down our way, and so now the water's decreasing. So when we are looking at some of our preemptive flood protection actions, it doesn't mean because that river flow rate is increasing. We planned this well in advance to do this. It just so happens that the river increased. Should actually see a bit of a drop as to what Mayor Clugston had said. But ultimately, when it comes down to our preemptive flood protection actions, so we're finalizing the process of filling up all of our sandbags. So we're moving well along with that process. What we started this week, actually yesterday, is constructing our temporary measures. So we started out at Industrial Avenue, so along that stretch there with temporary measures. So some of you may know them as muscle walls. Now, in the coming days, we're actually going to be moving over to the Harlow area that's adjacent to the river, and so this is going to be behind some houses there. And so this won't be disruptive by any means, or to try to limit the disruption as we proceed here in the coming days. But ultimately, this is out of an abundance of caution. So given the fact that, yeah, we within 36 to 48 hours ago, we saw 950 cubic meters per second, but it's still out of an abundance of caution as it relates to COVID-19. So a lot of questions have been, why are we doing this so early? Why are we, why don't we have enough time? Should we actually have a flood event or be warned of a flood event to actually erect all of these measures in advance? And it really comes down to those Chief Medical Officer of Health orders. So the physical distancing requirements. It's really difficult to compress all of those activities in such a short period of time. So we're looking at sometimes 3 to 4 days max to be able to do all of these things while still having to abide by those physical distancing requirements. And so we want to ensure that we are keeping our staff healthy, keeping our staff safe, while still providing safety for the community. So it's a bit of a win-win situation for everybody on this one. So we filled our sandbags, setting up those temporary measures. Now, if the threat becomes real, and we really won't know this until roughly about a week before we could have a flood, I'm not saying that we will, but we could, we'll look at erecting or finalizing the construction of the muscle walls or the temporary measures. So that's draping them in poly, setting up some of the floodgates, some of those things. But hopefully we won't have to do that. Hopefully we'll be able to basically go through June and part of July there and deem that the flood risk is low and be able to take those things away. So just wanted to provide those two updates regarding playground structures and our preemptive flood measures. But again, when it comes down to a flooding, we're not there. Like this is out of an abundance of caution. Really, we need all that rain to come down right on the mountain ranges, all that snow to come down at the same time to actually really have a risk of flooding. So I'll leave it at that and open it up to any questions. So the question was, any additional information regarding other facility openings such as the Esplanade, and I can't provide a further update on this one. Esplanade is still closed as we see it. We're still working on our plans for this one. I just want to come back to the fact that we'll open when we're ready, given the fact that we want to have a safe environment for the public. We want to have a safe environment for our staff. I think where it gets a little bit difficult is when you start thinking about museums and art galleries and what the province is, you think about those environments where you walk around and look at art. Our area isn't like that. I mean, most museums and art galleries are actually very interactive right now, so it actually takes a lot more work to get into meeting the provincial guidelines for that. It's not simply just walking around and looking at art. It's we have a lot of interactive exhibits.